With My Hero Academia supposedly drawing to a close this year, there are still several questions without answers. For example, will Deku keep One for All? And who exactly is All for One's gigantic bodyguard, Giganto Machia? They are mysteries that have been on all of our minds for a very long time now. Some may be answered, while others are likely to remain unsolved. Today we'll be counting down the top 10 mysteries within My Hero Academia. Number 10. Who was Shimaranas Husband? First up, we have a pretty tame conundrum. As manga readers are well aware, Shimaranana was not only a holder of One for All and a mentor to All Might, but the maternal grandmother to All for One's successor, Shigaraki Tomura. However, there is an unknown variable within their turbulent lives. Shimaranana's husband is only mentioned offhandedly by Gran Torino. All we know is that he was killed by All for One, prompting Nana to hide her son, Shigaraki's dad, from the world of heroes. He is integral to the Shimura family, especially to Shigaraki himself. But like Hisashi, there is no face. Unlike Hisashi, Nana's husband isn't even named. Is it possible Nana's unnamed husband was a hero? I mean, it probably is, considering Nana herself desperately wants to keep her son from harm. This is further cemented by the fact that All for One would go after anyone related to a One for All holder. However, that itself raises a question. If Nana's husband was a hero, why haven't we heard of him? Why is there no proof of his existence beyond a one-off comment by Gran Torino? Surely the grandfather of Shigaraki is important. If it weren't for his marriage to Nana, Shigaraki would have never existed, nor would All for One have a tool to use against One for All. Most likely this hasn't been answered because while we know some things about Shimaranana, we do not have the entire picture. We don't even know why or how she came to be a One for All holder. After all, float on its own isn't necessarily powerful. But before we go any further into things, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload, and smash that like button for some plot armor today. It is entirely likely we may never know exactly who Nana's husband is. The only people alive who know are Gran Torino and All for One. All for One delights in knowing secrets and staying ahead of people. Nana's husband isn't information he would give lightly. Meanwhile, Gran Torino is tight-lipped about the entire situation to begin with. Unfortunately, Shimaranana's husband may never be revealed. But while discussing family, let's dive into another mystery regarding a hero. Number 9. Who is All Might's family? All Might's family has been an enigma from the start. Unlike Deku, it appears he had no one questioning how he suddenly gained a quirk or trying to persuade him from hero work. Once he gets One for All from Shimaranana, he is able to enroll in UA, no problem, and goes to study abroad. It raises the question, where and who are All Might's family? Is it possible that like several other characters, he is an orphan? He never makes any reference to family, not siblings, not parents, not relatives. The lack of his own family is important. After all, Deku was supported by his mom from the start. Yet the only familiar tie All Might has is Gran Torino, and Gran Torino is not family. It is a bizarre mystery in and of itself due to the themes present in My Hero Academia, one of them being the concept of family. Whether it be found family like Gran Torino and All Might, or blood related like Deku and his mother. Not to mention, the only people there for All Might when he got his life-altering wound were Gran Torino, Principal Nezu, and Sir Night-Eye. In fact, All Might makes a peculiar statement regarding Nana. I thought of her as my own mother. It's a bizarre comment. I mean, surely he has a family. Regardless, this mystery probably won't be solved unless it's by All Might's own words. Before One for All, he was just a quirkless teenager, someone who was a nobody. There isn't anyone currently who has come forward staking a relation to him. It's only something All Might can explain, but it's doubtful he'll go into detail while the heroes are fighting a war. Ergo, this is sadly a mystery that will probably go unsolved. Number 8. Did Overhaul escape All for One's hospital? Truthfully, this mystery was not fully fleshed out until more recent chapters, specifically chapter 350. 350 is significant because it features Dabi waking up and then escaping from All for One's nursery. Interestingly enough, the floor and wall designs look familiar. To illustrate my point, let's go back to a certain villain's backstory. As a child, Koichi Saki, otherwise known as Overhaul, was seen in a sort of children's home, complete with a distinctive checkered floor and childlike wall decor. Granted, not much is known about Overhaul's upbringing. There is a panel of him learning about quirks, and then later on he meets up with his pseudo-father, the Shie Hasaikai boss. It's not unlikely Overhaul could have escaped. His quirk is insanely powerful after all. Yet All for One made no attempt or mention of him. If All for One recruited him as a replacement for Shigaraki like Dabi, it is not ridiculous to assume he would keep tabs on one of his failed experiments. But perhaps All for One felt Overhaul was as uncontrollable as Dabi. I mean, is it possible that the nurseries just look similar? To further add to the mystery, Overhaul would have been 20 by the time Dabi burned down All for One's hospital. Is it possible he escaped and was picked up by his beloved boss? If so, it just further proves the connection between them and the reach All for One has. Understandably, the similarities seem more like an Easter egg. Despite that, we have neither confirmation from Dabi or Overhaul about it. However, it is important to note that we may never truly get an answer. It's unlikely Overhaul has connected the faceless potato head All for One to the man who ran the nursery. Plus, who's to say he can even remember it to begin with? There's no telling how long or even if he was in the nursery. Number 7. Who is Giganto Machia? If All for One was Victor Frankenstein, then Giganto Machia is Frankenstein's monster. He is unnatural within the world of quirks. Instead of having one, Giganto Machia possesses 5. Typically, multiple quirks have only been seen with Nomu. In the words of the nefarious Dr. Q Shigaraki, he could handle multiple quirks without getting remodeled. Suffice to say, Giganto Machia is truly unusual. That being said, Giganto Machia is not known just for his insane ability to retain quirks. He happens to be All for One's bodyguard, yet we know so little about him. We don't even know his real name or age, but he's been All for One's protector since All for One's rule of terror. As the audience, we only really know his quirks and relationship to other characters. In fact, he even serves as a big antagonist to both Mina and Kirishima. Despite that, Giganto Machia's history is shrouded in mystery. So that begs the question, why? He is an integral part to All for One's group, important enough to be passed on in a way to All for One's successor, Shigaraki. However, we don't even know his backstory, or if one of the 5 quirks he has was his own. Granted, it is highly likely that one of them is. After all, his neurological abilities seem to be hindered by the amount of quirks. Speaking of his quirks, there is a connection there as well. One of his quirks mirrors a famous vintage hero that Kirishima admires, Crimson Riot. With his connections to heroes as well as villains, it's hard to guess why his origins and history are unknown. More importantly, his own backstory would give more meaning to the deranged, animalistic man under All for One's control. Unfortunately, the series is in its last arc, so perhaps we will see this unfold in his penultimate fight against Mina and Kirishima. But until then, we are only left with questions and no answers. Number 6. Why and how did quirks suddenly appear? Quirks as we know them are still an enigma. In My Hero Academia, they appeared many years before the story is set, with a baby having the ability to essentially be a nightlight. Quirks evolved from there, becoming powers that could serve in combat as well as hiding and helping others. Regardless, we still know very little about how they actually came to be. Dr. Shigaraki may know, but his belief is presented as a theory. We'll get into that theory shortly though. The entirety of quirks begs the question, why did they suddenly appear? Man hasn't evolved in so long, and yet quirks began to randomly appear. To further add to the mystery, quirks seemingly evolve over time. This is where we get into Dr. Garaki's theory, quirk singularity. For example, Gang Orca and Midoko. Both have animal quirks, however Gang Orca's gives him a more animalistic appearance and a known weakness. Meanwhile, Midoko seemingly has no drawback from her quirk and only takes the necessary evolutionary traits. Massive leg strength, enhanced hearing with rabbit ears, and can sense danger. Despite being from the same generation, Midoko's quirk only adapted what was needed. Why? This question may never truly be answered, but we can speculate a bit. As Dr. Shigaraki theorized, quirks will only continue to grow in power and out of control with each new generation. We see this with the Masagaki primary school students, who possess quirks that are more combative than anything else, which is a far cry from the original luminescent baby. Not to mention, being able to emit light like that isn't necessarily something helpful in combat nor in general, especially if you consider the quirk cannot be turned off. The baby was just born like that. It's a power that, unlike decay or one for all, serves no purpose. Why have an evolutionary trait that isn't helpful? It is a question we may not see answered. Quirk singularity has been seen as laughable enough for Dr. Shigaraki to be shunned. In his own words, nobody except All for One ever took me seriously. Yet it is an important question to ask. That being said, there are other mysteries to cover pertaining to quirks, especially pertaining to a certain villain and his damaging ability. Number 5. Where is Dekus Dad? The age-old question in My Hero Academia since it began. Deku's father, Hisashi Midoriya, is someone we have anticipated for years now. Since 2018 to be exact. His absence in both Deku's life and the story is bizarre to say the least. All we know about him is that he is married to Inko, has a fire-breathing quirk, and is a businessman abroad. Regardless, surely he could have made the trip back to Japan. Shigaraki's reign made enough national news that other countries declined to help. But as we know, Hisashi didn't. Maybe it was due to travel restrictions or a lack of interest in Deku's life. Either way, we know so little about Hisashi. We don't even have a physical description. Granted, it is clear Deku gets his looks from his mom. But why hide Hisashi's presence in the story like this? Surely he couldn't be so cold-hearted or busy enough to ignore the multiple hospital visits Deku has had. There may be multiple answers to this question, but there is something rather telling. Again, this deals with All For One. Just like Hisashi, All For One himself is cast into the unknown. There isn't a clear shot of his face. Plus, as Horikoshi stated at Comic-Con, Deku's father will be revealed in the future. Not introduced, but revealed. It's almost as if we've seen him, but we haven't seen the connection between a known character and Hisashi. Clearly, Horikoshi is waiting for the perfect time to introduce him. After all, he is the father of the protagonist. That being said, it is plausible we may never truly get a satisfying answer. The last time Hisashi was brought up was in 2018. Hopefully Hisashi himself has not been forgotten and will play a part in Deku's life, for better or for worse. Number 4. Did Shigaraki get his quirk from All For One? Next comes a mystery that has kept me up at night. As readers know, Shigaraki seemingly manifested his destructive quirk Decay at age 5. What's bizarre is that quirks typically show up before 4. Now there are people who are late bloomers, but it's interesting that just before Shigaraki displayed Decay, a certain tall businessman crossed his path. Adding weight to this is the fact that this particular man had his face obscured. Sound familiar? And this is something that season 5 of the anime adaptation left out. And I imagine this is because they did not know how to properly handle this without it being just All For One. I mean, face or not, if his voice is the same, then it is definitive, it is conclusive. His appearance and then the sudden manifestation of Decay, which is considered a mutation, is odd. It's almost too perfect. Which brings the question, was Shigaraki cursed with this quirk? Or is there a more nefarious, calculating explanation? Shigaraki himself was unaware of his own power or memories until My Villain Academia. The origins of his quirk matter. My Villain Academia served as the crux of Shigaraki's development and unlocked his true potential with Decay. In spite of that, we can't even be sure if his quirk was truly an unfortunate genetic mistake or planned. It's doubtful Shigaraki himself would know, especially because the day he manifested Decay was locked away due to trauma. Besides that, it is unlikely All For One or the doctor would indulge in this information. Shigaraki's own amnesia is exactly how he became the monster he is. It's unfortunate that we may never know if Shigaraki's quirk was acquired naturally or through the intervention of All For One. However, there is one thing for sure, it's one heck of a mystery. I'm also curious if Shigaraki would even care. Number 3. What is the second user's quirk? Finally, one of the mysteries I have been dying to discuss. Every quirk within One For All has now been revealed, except for one, which happens to be the second user's quirk. This meta ability, as the second user phrases it, was strong enough to break into All For One's prison and free his brother, Yoriichi. This power is a mystery in and of itself, considering we've received no hints or explanation. The second user's ability is as vague as it gets. We don't even have an official name. With that in mind, it is important to note that this quirk as it stands isn't what it originally was. We may never know what the quirk was originally. As the second user explains, mine evolved into a particularly unique power. His quirk itself is powerful enough that the second user notes it is only to be used as a last resort. A clue might be in the massive gauntlets he wears, but we also don't know the exact function of those gauntlets. Are they a support item or a red herring? The second user appeared to use them in combat, ready to blast the original holder of All For One away. That being said, I lean more towards support item. Sadly, we probably won't know until the final confrontation between Deku and Shigaraki. In fact, the second user hints at this in more recent chapters. Despite that, it is still a massive question, especially considering it is the quirk that has been inside One For All the longest, meaning it is the most powerful, at least in theory. A grand finale to Deku's arsenal. The quirk itself will likely be the key to Deku's victory, maybe somehow nullifying Shigaraki's infamous Decay. Number 2. Where is Koichi? Unfortunately, very recently, My Hero Academia Vigilantes ended. It left readers and myself curious as to where and when Koichi will appear in the main story. Granted, he is not super significant to the main plot, but there is no reason he wouldn't try to lend a hand. I mean, we are talking about a guy who became a hero in spite of his rather uninteresting quirk. He would certainly, like Star and Stripe, jump at the chance to help All Might. I mean, the guy wore an All Might hoodie after all. He is a big fan, even being influenced into vigilante work by the guy, so his absence is noted. Where exactly is Koichi? He was the star of Vigilantes, which saw a cameo from several heavy hitters from the main story. Koichi was also a fan favorite. If the fan art online is anything to go by, a beloved character by all. We can make assumptions, but surely he'd want to lend a hand during the final showdown between the ultimate evil and heroes. He risks his own life time and time again, and ends the series being recognized for it. Due to the ending of Vigilantes, it is unlikely we will know his current status. That is, unless Shigaraki or All For One display his quirk, which would be unfortunate to the highest degree. It is also plausible Koichi managed to return to Japan despite the travel bans. We could speculate about it forever, but there is one thing for sure. Until Koichi's status is confirmed, we simply won't know what he is up to. Especially considering in more modern times, Star and Stripe is the #1 hero, while Koichi is a sidekick of Captain Celebrity. We also know another thing. The author of Vigilantes hinted at Koichi possibly appearing in My Hero Academia. The manga itself ends with a thankful and hopeful message of thank you for reading. The story continues in My Hero Academia. So despite the series having sadly ended, there is a little dream that we may see Koichi once again. Number 1. Will Deku keep One for All? At last, we have come to the biggest conundrum within the series. It has been hinted several times that Deku may lose his arms, but do we know if he will keep his quirk? To illustrate how dire the situation is, let's talk about his arms. With them, one doctor outright tells him, if I can be honest, the damage was beyond words. His quirk itself is so physically damaging that in a way it is like tiny explosions within the body. Not only that, but it is such a ridiculously strong quirk when combined with other abilities within it. If Deku were to keep it, surely there would be no need for other heroes. A hero with One for All to its fullest extent could replace the outdated hero commission as it stands. However, it is doubtful Deku could support Japan like that. All Might couldn't, and the story itself focuses on teamwork. But let's get into Deku and what keeping or getting rid of One for All means. Deku began as a quirkless middle schooler with a big dream he refused to let go of. One for All is bigger than life within the series. It is the only power capable of stopping All For One and returning Japan to order and civility. The weight of this quirk narratively is huge. That being said, it is extremely likely we will find out in an epilogue. Deku will either continue to be a hero with One for All or come full circle and become quirkless. Personally, I love the concept of Deku going back to being quirkless due to the idea that One for All is a tool and not a long-term weapon. Plus, Deku deserves a rest for all the heroics in store for him. But man, all these mysteries and yet no answers. I'm sure some of them will be solved during the final arc, but some of them probably won't, while others will continue to be a hot topic of discussion for readers. The unresolved questions are what makes the series so engaging. That being said, what's your favorite mystery within My Hero Academia? And if there's one that we did not cover, let us know down below. As always, I'm Selective Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.